The Sword Alliance? What's that? Everyone here gazed at Yuan Feng with astonishment. Needless to say, his actions had truly surprised them. They hadn't expected someone to actually step forward and refuse. Even though he was a quasi-emperor, they felt that he was really too bold. After all, Doomsday City was one of the strongest powers on the continent. Moreover, they were facing 6 quasi-emperors right now. The black-robed man was stunned as well. Obviously, he hadn't expected anyone to step forward and refuse. He was just about to make an example out of Yuan Feng when Yuan Feng suddenly continued, "Everyone, we discovered this ruin together. So on what basis does he say that it belongs to Doomsday City? Why should Doomsday City get half of everything we obtain? It's ours. So why should we give it to them?" The expressions of many immediately turned gloomy. Obviously, Yuan Feng's words resonated with them. Why should they give half of their gains to Doomsday City? "You're courting death." The black-robed man was about to attack when numerous rays of light appeared abruptly, and then the ropes which tied the white dragon were instantly severed. Roar! The white dragon suddenly opened its eyes and glanced at Yang Yi. After that, it transformed into a ray of white light that shot into the sky and fled towards the distance. The spirit vein! The black-robed man was shocked. He couldn't be bothered to deal with Yuan Feng anymore, and he immediately chased after the spirit vein with the other quasi-emperors on his side. But it didn't take long for the black-robed man's voice to resound from far away. "Don't let them leave! Kill anyone who dares to try and leave." As soon as the black-robed man's voice resounded, the 1,000+ high-rank saints from Doomsday City that were guarding the entrance to the gorge had immediately gazed at the others here, and their gazes surged with killing intent. "Why should we fear them? Kill!" Someone shouted, and then a ray of light shot into the army of experts from Doomsday City before one of their heads rolled to the ground. "How dare you!" The old man who led the group roared with fury. "Do all of you want to die?" He didn't dare to order the army to attack because their quasi-emperors had gone to pursue the spirit vein. But there were over a dozen quasi-emperors here. "There's no gain without risk." The voice from before resounded once more. "Kill!" As soon as his voice finished resounding, another ray of light shot into the army and another head flew up into the air. "Kill!" This time, many others stopped hesitating and charged towards the entrance of the gorge. Since some had charged forward, the rest had no choice but to charge as well, because they were all very well aware that they would be finished once those quasi-emperors returned. Yi Luyun glanced at the surroundings, but was still incapable of locating the person who'd launched the first attack. She pondered deeply for a few moments before waving her right hand. "Kill our way out. If they didn't leave now, it would be impossible to leave once the black-robed man's group returned." As for Doomsday City, she didn't have the time to think about all of that now. "Kill!" The Soul Eater mercs charged forward like a tide. "Kill our way out." The Snow Lion mercs were right behind them. The experts from Doomsday City who were guarding the entrance were instantly stunned. Even though the forces before them just consisted of independent cultivators and some lousy mercenaries, the joint forces of their enemy far surpassed their own. So, how could they dare to resist such a force? The old man who led the group was no fool, and he immediately waved his hand and commanded, "Retreat!" As soon as his voice resounded, the army behind him instantly moved aside and opened up a path. The independent cultivators and mercenaries didn't try to continue killing, and they just fled out of the gorge. As far as they were concerned, the most important matter at hand was to flee far away and stay far away from Doomsday City's territory. Otherwise, only death would be awaiting them. In the chaotic crowd, Yang Yi glanced at Yuan Feng and said, "Lead the others from our Sword Alliance out, and then hide yourselves." "Understood." Yuan Feng nodded to Yang Yi and left. Yang Yi glanced at the surroundings, and then his figure shot towards the direction that the white dragon had left towards. If it was possible, he naturally didn't want to let a divine-grade spirit vein slip by. If it was in the past, he would absolutely be incapable of fighting 6 quasi-emperors even if he used all his trump cards, unless the sword spirit and Xianxia woke up. Yet now, not to mention 6 quasi-emperors, he wouldn't even fear 12 quasi-emperors. Presently, he even dared to fight emperors head-on. Suddenly, Yang Yi frowned, and then his figure shook before vanishing on the spot. It didn't take long for 3 figures to flash past Xianxia's position. It was none other than Yi Luyun, Mu Kanglin, and the other old man at the quasi-emperor realm from the Soul Eater Mercs. Yang Yi gazed at Yi Luyun's figure from the shadows, and he pondered deeply for a moment. He'd underestimated her ambition because she intended to try and obtain the divine grade spirit vein. But it did make sense because possessing such a spirit vein represented that one would have a good chance at creating a diamond rank power. Because many people would be attracted to join a power that possessed a divine grade spirit vein. Moreover, even if it isn't used to establish a diamond rank power, possessing such a spirit vein came with huge benefits. For example, selling it off. In short, anyone with strength and ambition wouldn't give up easily. It didn't take long for more rays of light to pass by Yang Yi. Yang Yi glanced at them. There were the members of the Snow Lion Mercs, some other mercenary groups, and even independent cultivators. All of them were quasi-emperors. This is getting interesting. Yang Yi chuckled and vanished on the spot. Roar! Suddenly, a dragon roar resounded from afar, and it carries a trace of pain. It has been caught. Xianxia's eyes narrowed slightly as he sped up. The white dragon was just a spirit vein. Even though it had its own consciousness, it wasn't a real dragon. So, its combat strength was absolutely weak. Of course, even a real dragon at the quasi-emperor realm would probably be no match for the joint forces of 6 quasi-emperors. In next to no time, Yang Yi saw the black-robed man's group. At this moment, the white dragon was bound tightly by silver threads while they stood around it. At this moment, the black-robed man and the others had quite ferocious and unsightly expressions on their faces, because Yi Luyun and the others were standing in front of them. Yi Luyun and the others consisted of almost 13 quasi-emperors. Moreover, it seemed like Yi Luyun's side had come to an agreement. The black-robed man gazed at them with a ferocious gaze. "Do all of you want to die?" Yi Luyun spoke indifferently. "You can only blame yourself for being too benevolent. Based on the way your Doomsday City does things, we'll definitely be pursued upon leaving this place. Since we've offended Doomsday City, then why not offend you until the end? In any case, Doomsday City won't spare us. So cut the crap. We just want the spirit vein. Hand it over and we'll leave right now. Otherwise..." The black-robed man laughed coldly. "Otherwise what?" "Otherwise all of you will die here today." Yi Luyun withdrew a dark green longbow. "Just a few lousy independent cultivators and mercenaries are going to do that?" The black-robed man laughed with disdain. "If we want to crush all of you, kill!" Yi Luyun interrupted him, and then an ink-black arrow shot forward as soon as she finished speaking. At the same time, the other quasi-emperors attacked in unison. "Stop them! Our experts will be here in 100 breaths of time at most." As soon as the black-robed man finished speaking, his figure shot towards Yi Luyun and the others. The other quasi-emperors behind him attacked simultaneously as well. After all, how could they let go of a divine-grade spirit vein? They didn't dare to do so as well. However, their fate was quite sad. The battle had only gone on for less than 10 breaths of time when one of them fell. It couldn't be helped. Yi Luyun's side had over 2 times their forces, and all of them were ready to die. Especially at a time like this, they'd resolved to take their enemies down with them if necessary. So, the black-robed man's group was at a complete disadvantage and their destruction was only a matter of time. Right when they were in fierce battle, a ray of light suddenly flashed by before the silver threads which bound the white dragon were severed. After that, a black shadow suddenly appeared before the white dragon. The others watched with shock as the figure grabbed the white dragon's horn and transformed into a ray of light that vanished into the distance. Everyone here was stunned. A moment later, their expressions became unsightly because someone had taken advantage of them. They didn't waste their breaths and immediately shot off in pursuit. The black shadow had naturally been Yang Yi. He'd immediately risen his speed to its limits once he grabbed the white dragon, and the white dragon was almost unable to endure his speed. But Yang Yi paid no attention to the white dragon and didn't stop increasing his speed. He was going faster and faster, and the white dragon's face was covered in extreme pain. As for Snowy, She'd hidden herself within the pocket of space that Zir had created near Yang Ye's chest. After some time passed, Yang Yi suddenly stopped and tapped his chest. Snowy immediately emerged from there. Yang Yi stood before the white dragon who was lying on the ground, and he gazed at the white dragon who was on the verge of death and said, "Follow me, or—" When he spoke up to this point, he pointed at Snowy, "Or I'll let her swallow you." Snowy blinked and immediately opened her mouth. The white dragon glanced at Yang Yi, and then it glanced at Snowy. Its huge eyes instantly constricted when it saw Snowy, and there was a trace of terror in its eyes. Snowy was extremely pleased by such a reaction, and she opened her mouth and sucked lightly. In an instant, some of the white dragon's spirit energy entered her mouth. The white dragon trembled, and then it instinctively crawled backwards while looking at Snowy with terror in its eyes. Yang Yi glanced at Snowy. She really is a bane of all spirit veins. Yang Yi gazed at the white dragon and said, 10 breaths of time. It'll take 10 breaths of time for them to catch up. I'll give you 5 breaths of time. If you don't agree, then I'll let Snowy eat you right now. Snowy nodded, and then she opened her mouth and even started drooling. The white dragon glanced at Yang Yi, glanced at Snowy, and then hesitated before nodding before Snowy's threats. Yang Yi waved his right hand, and then both Snowy and the white dragon entered the pocket of space on his chest. Meanwhile, Yi Luyun and the others appeared in the sky. It was too late to hide, because they'd noticed him, so they would definitely pursue him without end if he were to hide now. Yang Yi hesitated for a moment before lying down on the ground, and his body started shivering incessantly as if he'd encountered something terrifying. The black-robed man and the others stopped in the sky above Yang Yi because the white dragon's auras was gone. All of them had extremely unsightly expressions on their faces. It didn't take long for their gazes to descend upon Yang Ye's shivering figure. Mu Kanglin and Yi Luyun frowned when they saw Yang Yi, because they hadn't expected it to be him. Meanwhile, the black-robed man suddenly gazed at Yang Yi and said, "Did you see a white dragon fly by?" Yang Yi glanced at the black-robed man with terror, and then he stretched out a trembling hand as he pointed towards the distance. He spoke with a trembling voice. There was a black-robed and white-haired old man. He had a sword in his grasp, and he flew over there with a dragon in his grasp. A white-haired old man? The black-robed man frowned slightly, and he was about to leave when he suddenly gazed at Yang Yi. "Why are you trembling?" Yang Yi couldn't even speak smoothly as he said, I was afraid. Trash. The black-robed man waved his right hand as he finished speaking, and a powerful wave of energy shot forward and instantly slammed against Yang Yi. Ah! A shrill cry resounded as Yang Ye's figure was smashed into the ground. The black-robed man didn't even spare Yang Yi a second glance before vanishing into the distance with the others. As for Yi Luyun and the others, they didn't continue their pursuit. They'd missed the best opportunity, and they would only be throwing themselves into a pit of death by following the black-robed man's group. Good luck! Elder Mo gazed at Yi Luyun and the others as he cupped his fists. After that, he led the snow lion mercs away. The other mercenaries and independent cultivators at the quasi-emperor realm hesitated for a moment, and then they turned around and left. Presently, it was time to flee, because they knew that it wouldn't take long for Doomsday City's forces to start pursuing them. Perhaps their experts were already on the way now. Only the 3 members of the Soul Eater mercs remained on the spot. Yi Luyun held her dark green longbow tightly and remained silent. The gray-robed old man by Yi Luyun's side asked, "What do you plan to do now?" Yi Luyun was about to speak when she suddenly looked down at the deep hole in the ground. She grabbed a figure out of it with her right hand. It was naturally Yang Ye's figure. Mu Kanglin and the old man were slightly stunned when they saw Yang Yi, because he was still alive. After all, they'd sensed Yang Ye's aura vanish when he was struck earlier. Yang Yi gazed at them while slight fear could be seen on his face. Yi Luyun asked, "What are you doing here?" Yang Yi glanced at Mu Kanglin and said, I was afraid that she would kill me. So I fled. Yi Luyun gazed at Yang Yi for a short while and said, "Who are you?" Xianxia's face was covered in bewilderment as he said, "Huh." Yi Luyun gazed at Yang Yi and said, "When we met for the first time, both Kanglin and Gulan hadn't been able to avoid my arrow. Yet you could. The second time we met, which was just now, you'd attained the Saint Realm from the Half-Saint Realm. Moreover, you've appeared here now and are completely unharmed after suffering the attack of a quasi-emperor. Do you really intend to continue keeping up this act?" Mu Kanglin and the old man's gazes instantly descended upon Yang Yi, and there was doubt in their eyes. Yang Yi remained silent. Yi Luyun continued, "That person who took the divine grade spirit vein is related to you, right?" Yang Yi shook his head decisively. What a joke. He couldn't admit that. Otherwise, he would be besieged by everyone in this place and Doomsday City. While he didn't fear them, he wasn't stupid enough to make enemies for no reason. Yi Luyun asked, "Then what are you doing here? Don't tell me it's because Kanglin wanted to kill you. If it really was that, then you should be fleeing towards the outside and not this place." Yang Yi hesitated for a moment and said, Actually, I just wanted to loot some treasures. But I never expected to encounter all of you on your way to pursue that white dragon." Yi Luyun was about to say something when the old man spoke instead. "We have to leave already." Yi Luyun glanced at Yang Yi and said, "Come with us if you don't want to die." As soon as she finished speaking, Yi Luyun turned around and left. Yang Yi glanced at her, and then followed after her. Yi Luyun and the others' expressions changed when they left the ruins, because everyone who'd emerged from the ruin was just ahead. A group of blue-robed figures were all around the area, and there were a few thousand of them. All of them were at the Saint Realm or above, and they'd encircled the people here. The blue and white-robed man with a sword on his waist and a woman in a blue dress were standing not too far away from everyone. There were 5 other white-robed old men standing behind the man and woman. The man, woman, and the 5 old men were quasi-emperors. Yang Yi was stunned when he saw the man with the sword, because that fellow's appearance was actually quite alike to his own. Yang Yi turned to look at Nan Shuang, who was standing not too far away. Sure enough, Nan Shuang's gaze was fixed on that fellow. Yang Yi pondered deeply for a moment, and then he walked over to Nan Shuang and spoke softly, "He's that fiancé of yours?" Nan Shuang remained silent. Yang Yi rubbed Nan Shuang's head, and then he gazed at the man. Meanwhile, that man with a sword glanced at everyone here and said, "My Dark Sky Sect has no intention to make things difficult for all of you. We just want the divine grade spirit vein." Meanwhile, Elder Mo from the Snow Lion Mercs said, "It's in the hands of Doomsday City. You can go in and ask them for it. Then I'll wait for them to come out." The man grinned and said, "I forgot something. My Dark Sky Sect is interested in the treasures within the ruins. So you can sell what you've obtained in the ruins to my Dark Sky Sect. Don't worry. My Dark Sky Sect will definitely treat all of you well and give you a reasonable price." At this point, he pointed at the disciples who were standing not too far behind him and said, "All of you can leave now if you want. You just have to let us take a look at the contents of your spatial rings. If we're interested in anything, then we'll purchase it immediately. If we aren't interested, then all of you may leave. Right, let me give all of you a word of advice. Don't try anything. Otherwise, don't blame my Dark Sky Sect for showing no mercy." The expressions of everyone here had instantly turned gloomy upon hearing him. Let them see the contents of our spatial rings? They clearly intend to rob us. The man grinned, and then he moved back to the side of the woman in a blue dress. Meanwhile, the woman's gaze suddenly descended onto Nan Shuang. The others in front of Nan Shuang hurriedly moved aside at the sight of this. Just like that, Nan Shuang was exposed before the woman in a blue dress. Meanwhile, the man with a sword on his waist gazed at Nan Shuang as well, and he was instantly stunned when he saw her. The woman walked over to Nan Shuang, so the man hurriedly followed her. Meanwhile, Nan Shuang's hands were clenched tightly, while her gaze was still locked onto the man. The expressions of the members of the former Phoenix Mercs changed, and they hurriedly went over and stood behind Nan Shuang. Meanwhile, Mu Kanglin appeared by Nan Shuang's side as well, and her eyes were filled with vigilance. Yi Luyun's brows knit together at the sight of this scene. Nan Shuang finally gazed at the woman in a blue dress when she arrived around 50 m away from Nan Shuang. The woman gazed at Nan Shuang and said, "I noticed that you've been constantly staring at my darling since we arrived here. Tell me why." Nan Shuang glanced at the man and remained silent. Meanwhile, the man hesitated for a moment and said, "Yenner. She used to be my fiancée." "Your fiancée?" The woman's eyes instantly narrowed when she heard him, and her gaze was icy cold. The man's expression changed slightly at the sight of this, and he hurriedly said, "But there's no connection between us now. I cut off all ties with her when Master took interest in my potential that day. There's no connection between us anymore." The woman gazed at him and asked, "Really?" The man hurriedly nodded. "Of course. Yenner, just take a look for yourself. Can she even be compared to you? Both her appearance and natural talent are inferior to yours, so how could I possibly have any connection to her? Yenner, you're the only one in my heart. I can swear on it." The woman in a blue dress said, "Then kill her." Mu Kanglin and the others' expressions changed drastically when they heard her. Yang Yi glanced at the woman in a blue dress, and then he gazed at the man with a sword on his waist. Nan Shuang was looking at the man as well. Even the man with a sword was stunned by what the woman had said. Obviously, he hadn't expected her to say that. Meanwhile, the woman in a blue dress continued, "What? You can't bear to kill her?" The man's expression changed slightly. Meanwhile, the woman spoke abruptly again. "You can't bear to do it? It's fine. Then go with her." As soon as she finished speaking, she turned around and walked away. "I'll kill her." Suddenly, the man's voice resounded. The woman stopped and turned around to look at him. "I'll be watching." The man gazed at Nan Shuang with a gloomy expression on his face, and he spoke fiercely, "Don't blame me. You can only blame yourself. Why did you look at me for no reason? I told you that there's no connection between us anymore. We aren't from the same world at all. We aren't." Nan Shuang clenched her fists and said, "Lin Xing, what are you so proud of? Aren't you just a quasi-emperor?" As she spoke, she felt that there was no confidence in her words, so she turned around and gazed at Yang Yi. "Don't you think so too?" Yang Yi nodded and was really cooperative. "Quasi-emperors really are nothing worth mentioning." A wisp of disdain arose on the corners of Lin Xing's mouth. "It is nothing worth mentioning, but killing both of you will be as easy as stomping on ants." Yang Yi chuckled, and then he rubbed Nan Shuang's head and said, "Do you want to beat him up?" Nan Shuang nodded unconsciously. Yang Yi smiled. "Then how about I help you do that?" Nan Shuang was about to nod again, but she suddenly gazed at Yang Yi and spoke softly. "Are you still going to brag at a time like this? Just go." Meanwhile, the woman in a blue dress spoke abruptly. "Are you still not going to do it?" Lin Xing stopped hesitating and issued a command in his heart. The sword on his waist suddenly left its sheath and transformed into a ray of light that shot at Nan Shuang. Nan Shuang's face instantly turned pale. Meanwhile, Yang Yi suddenly pulled her behind him. Nan Shuang's expression changed drastically. She was just about to push Yang Yi aside when her eyes and mouth suddenly opened wide. Moreover, her eyes were filled with shock and disbelief. Everyone else here had a similar reaction, because they saw Lin Xing's sword being held by 2 fingers. Yang Yi gazed at Lin Xing, who was standing afar with shock on his face, and then a slight smile curled up on Yang Ye's face. "A quasi-emperor? I can fight 10 of them." As soon as he finished speaking, Yang Yi flicked the sword, and it instantly transformed into a ray of light that shot back towards its owner. It was swift like a bolt of lightning. Lin Xing's pupils constricted, and his palm was covered in a sharp glow as he slapped it at the sword. Clang! Lin Xing stopped the sword with his palm. However, Yang Yi suddenly appeared behind the sword, and then he tapped the end of its hilt. Hiss! The sword instantly transformed into a ray of light that passed through Lin Xing's palm, and a string of blood sprayed. At the same time, Lin Xing was even blasted almost 300 m back. Everyone here was flabbergasted, especially Mu Kanglin and the others. They'd been with Yang Yi for some time. In their opinion, He was a weak and spineless fellow who had bad natural talent and was afraid of death. In short, as far as they were concerned, Yang Yi was useless. Yet now, this scene before them had completely overturned their perception of Yang Yi. Even though it had only been a single attack, he was facing a quasi-emperor. Yet he'd injured a quasi-emperor with a single attack. Moreover, Yang Yi was just a saint, so they were an entire realm of cultivation apart. Mu Kanglin stared fixedly at Yang Yi, as if she wanted to see through him again. As for Nan Shuang, her mouth was opened slightly as she gazed at Yang Yi with disbelief. Yi Luyun was extremely shocked as well. Even though she felt that Yang Yi wasn't ordinary, she hadn't expected him to be so extraordinary. While Yang Yi had only displayed a little of his ability, only an idiot wouldn't be able to discern how very strong he was. He wasn't weaker to a quasi-emperor. He was comparable to a quasi-emperor while at the saint realm. That was something only monstrous geniuses could accomplish. Who is he? Yi Luyun and many others here had the same question in their minds. Yuan Feng clenched his fists tightly while excitement filled his eyes. Now, he was even more certain that Yang Yi was the disciple of the World Devastator cult's leader. At the moment Lin Xing's palm was pierced by the sword, the other quasi-emperors behind Lin Xing were about to charge forward, but they were stopped by the women in a blue dress. She glanced at Yang Yi, and then she gazed at Lin Xing. You wouldn't lose to an ant at the Saint Realm, right? Lin Xing's face became unsightly. A person's skill was obvious once that person took action. He knew that this fellow before him was extremely strong and not weaker to him at all. Of course, it didn't mean anything. After all, there were countless monstrous geniuses throughout this world. He'd once been able to surmount his realm of cultivation to do battle as well. Even though he'd suffered a slight injury, he was still confident. Lin Xing looked up towards Yang Yi. Meanwhile, Yang Yi gazed at Nan Shuang instead. I forgot to ask you, where do you want me to hit him? Nan Shuang gulped and was slightly hesitant. But she didn't hesitate for long before Yang Ye's encouraging smile, and it only took her a moment to speak softly. How? How about you hit his face first? It's his fault for being so rude. Yang Yi nodded. All right. How presumptuous of you. Meanwhile, Lin Xing roared furiously as he stomped his right foot against the ground, and his figure shot towards Yang Yi. At the same time, a sword suddenly appeared in front of him, and it emanated a ghastly and dazzling glow. Lin Xing took the sword in his right hand once he arrived before Yang Yi, and then his figure transformed into a ray of light that shot at Yang Yi. Watch out! Nan Shuang hurriedly shouted out to Yang Yi when she witnessed this scene. Yang Yi grinned to her. He turned around and gazed at the ray of light which had arrived before him, and then he slammed his fist forward. Bang! The glow around Lin Xing was immediately dispersed when Yang Ye's fist shot forward, and the powerful force within his fist blasted Lin Xing almost 1 kilometer back. Lin Xing was shocked by this turn of events. Meanwhile, Yang Yi suddenly appeared in front of him. Lin Xing was alarmed, and he immediately stabbed his sword at Yang Yi, but Yang Yi didn't attempt to dodge it at all. Clang! An ear-piercing sound of collision resounded, and Lin Xing's pupils constricted, because he felt like his sword had stabbed against iron. Not only had it been unable to break through Yang Ye's defenses, his arm felt numb instead. Slap! Meanwhile, a resounding slap resounded through the surroundings, while the others watched with astonishment as Lin Xing's figure was slapped away. Everyone noticed a few teeth flying out of Lin Xing's mouth, while accompanied by strands of blood. All the spectators had astonishment in their eyes when they witnessed this scene. He didn't have the ability to fight back at all. A quasi-emperor actually didn't have the ability to fight back against a saint. All of them were beyond shocked while Yuan Feng felt even more excited. It wasn't just Yuan Feng. All the other members of the Sword Alliance were the same. After all, they would be safe in this world if they had someone powerful to rely on. Nan Shuang should have felt happy when she witnessed this scene, but she was exceptionally calm. Since the moment he'd cancelled their betrothal, Nan Shuang had sworn to make Lin Xing aware that she wasn't the one who wasn't worth of him, and it was he who was unworthy of her. However, no matter how hard she worked, she who had no resources couldn't keep up to him at all. But she'd never given up. At the moment she gave her violet crystals to Yang Yi, she knew that it would be impossible for her to ever catch up to Lin Xing. At that moment, her obsession towards violet crystals had vanished. Or it should be said that she'd awakened from her dream. When she saw Lin Xing just now, she really wanted to head over, slap him flying, and tell him that she wasn't the one who wasn't worth of him. She wanted to tell him that he was blind and wasn't worthy of her. However, she knew that she couldn't do that. At that moment, she felt lost and helpless. As for the moment Lin Xing intended to kill her, she knew that her life had come to its end. Was a quasi-emperor formidable? Actually, in her opinion, quasi-emperors were extremely formidable. However, Yang Yi had suddenly appeared before her. While she watched Yang Yi strike Lin Xing as she'd asked, she didn't feel any happiness in her heart. There was only worry there. She was worried that Yang Yi would cause trouble for himself, because Lin Xing was from the Dark Sky Sect. So, Nan Shuang hurriedly ran over to Yang Ye's side and grabbed his arm when he was about to attack again. And then she shook her head. Forget it. Let's go. Yang Yi glanced at Nan Shuang and smiled. I'll do as you say. Yang Yi turned around and gazed at Yuan Feng and the others. Let's go. Yuan Feng and the others from the Sword Alliance quickly followed behind Yang Yi. Yi Luyun hesitated for a moment, and then she led her Soul Eater mercs behind Yang Ye's group. When Elder Mo from the Snow Lion mercs saw what Yi Luyun was doing, he hurriedly led his group over as well. As for the other independent cultivators and mercenaries, they hesitated for a moment before quickly following behind Yang Ye's group as well. No one wanted to hand over their possessions to the Dark Sky Sect. But the Dark Sky Sect was formidable, so none dared to resist them. Yet now, someone had stepped forward to fight against the Dark Sky Sect. Under the circumstances that they had someone to lead them into battle, they naturally chose to quickly seek protection from that person. After all, no one wanted to be oppressed by the Dark Sky Sect. Watch out! Suddenly, Nan Shuang cried out involuntarily. Everyone looked over and saw that Lin Xing had suddenly transformed into a ray of light that shot towards Yang Yi. Unlike before, Lin Xing's figure carried a strand of powerful pressure. It was quasi-void rank sword intent. The others' hearts shook when they sensed that pressure, and they looked over at Yang Yi. At this moment, they naturally didn't wish for anything to happen to Yang Yi. Yang Yi glanced at Lin Xing, and then he just slammed his fist forward. Bang! A terrifying wave of energy swept out from Yang Ye's fist. Space instantly started rippling while the sword intent and glow on Lin Xing's figure had been dispersed in an instant. At the same time, Lin Xing was blasted flying again. This time, he'd been blasted around 3 kilometers away, and his figure was dragged back around 300 m more even after he descended to the ground. The pupils of all the other experts constricted, because Yang Ye's attack only carried pure physical strength. A saint had used pure physical strength to render a quasi-emperor completely helpless. It made them wonder if he was a divine dragon or a man. All of them were extremely shocked. Yang Yi gazed at Nan Shuang, and then he pointed a finger at Lin Xing. You wouldn't feel unhappy if I kill him, right? Nan Shuang's heart couldn't help but tighten when she heard him. And then she hurriedly said, Why? Why would I be unhappy? Yang Yi replied, Then I'll be killing him. Nan Shuang hesitated for a moment and said, Don't kill him, all right? Yang Yi shook his head inwardly when he heard her. She still has some feelings for him. Meanwhile, Nan Shuang added, If you kill him, the Dark Sky Sect will definitely not let you live. The Dark Sky Sect is very formidable. Yang Yi was slightly stunned when he heard her, and then warmth flowed through his heart. So she was considering the consequences for me. Yang Yi rubbed Nan Shuang's head and smiled. I'll do as you ask. As he spoke, Yang Ye's figure flashed over to Lin Xing. Lin Xing was horrified and was just about to attack, but he felt a wave of pain come from his stomach before his figure was blasted flying again. At the moment his figure was blasted flying, the spatial ring on his finger had transformed into a ray of light that flew into Yang Ye's grasp. Yang Yi glanced at its contents. There were around 100 violet crystals within it. He shook his head and tossed the spatial ring to Nan Shuang. He's too poor. He only had 100 violet crystals. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and continued to lead everyone away. Nan Shuang glanced at the spatial ring in her grasp, and her hand was trembling slightly. 100 violet crystals. 100. As for Gulan and the others, there was slight envy in their eyes. After all, while 100 violet crystals were nothing for a disciple of a sect like Lin Xing, it was a huge figure for mercenaries like them. But Yang Yi had tossed it to Nan Shuang like he was tossing trash away. Suddenly, the woman in a blue dress voice resounded, "Stop right there!" As soon as she finished speaking, the experts of the Dark Sky Sect immediately shot over and obstructed Yang Yi and the others' path. Their hearts shook while quite unsightly expressions arose on their faces. Meanwhile, the woman led the other 5 quasi-emperors of the Dark Sky Sect over to Yang Yi, and then she looked him in the eye. "You think you're very strong?" Yang Yi glanced at her and the others behind her before he said, "My friends and I just want to leave, and we have no intention to go against the Dark Sky Sect. I'm serious. You just have to move aside, and we'll immediately vanish from your sight." The others behind Yang Yi quickly nodded when they heard him, because Yang Yi had spoken exactly what they were thinking. A slight smile curled up on the corners of the woman's mouth, and she stretched out her hand and pointed a finger at Yang Yi. "Who do you think you are? Go against my Dark Sky Sect? Are you even qualified to do that? My Dark Sky Sect refuses to move aside today." Yang Yi gazed at her and said, "We just want to leave. I'm serious." The others behind him hurriedly nodded to display their agreement. She walked over to Yang Yi, and then she moved her right leg sideways. She pointed at the gap between her legs and looked Yang Yi in the eyes. "Don't say that my Dark Sky Sect didn't give you a chance. You want to leave? You can. Just go through there and I'll let you leave." The expressions of the others behind Yang Yi had turned unsightly when they heard her. "She's going too far." All of them were livid. Even Nan Shuang's face was cold, and her hands were clenched tightly. She seemed like she was on the verge of being unable to restrain herself from attacking. It wasn't just Nan Shuang who was in such a state. Many other cultivators here were almost unable to stop themselves from attack. All of them were experts who lived dangerous lives, so they didn't lack courage at all. How could they remain indifferent when someone insulted them like that? However, reason told them that they couldn't attack, because the woman had 5 more quasi-emperors on her side, and all of them were from the Dark Sky Sect. If they attacked, they would die. Yang Yi gazed at her for a short while, and then he said, "We're just people who live from day to day, and we can't compare to the Dark Sky Sect. So, please show some mercy." The woman shrugged and said, "I gave all of you a chance. Just crawl through from beneath me, and—" Her voice stopped abruptly because Yang Yi had suddenly swung his fist. However, she wasn't nervous at all when he did that, and there was even a wisp of ridicule on the corners of her mouth. Right when Yang Ye's fist had arrived before her, a blue barrier suddenly appeared in front of her and obstructed Yang Ye's fist. Bang! The barrier shook violently while Yang Yi took 2 steps back, but she remained motionless on the spot. She laughed with ridicule and pointed at the blue pendant on her chest. "This is a quasi-emperor rank treasure, Sea of Protection. Even a quasi-emperor." Sword! Meanwhile, Yang Yi suddenly stretched out his hand and gestured. Lin Xing's sword suddenly let out a sword howl, struggled free of Lin Xing's grasp, and transformed into a ray of light that shot into Yang Ye's grasp. A moment later, Yang Yi appeared right before the woman, and the sword in his grasp stabbed swiftly against the barrier before her. Crack! A clear and resounding crack resounded, and then the blue barrier started cracking. Her expression changed drastically at the sight of it, and she was just about to retreat when Yang Yi exerted slight force with his right hand. Bang! The barrier shattered immediately, and shock arose in the woman's eyes. She was just about to flee when Yang Yi pressed forward and slammed his fist against her stomach. Pooh! Blood sprayed from her mouth as her figure in a sea as it flew backwards. Suddenly, Yang Yi appeared in front of her again, and then he grabbed her hair in midair before dragging her down to the ground. Once he arrived at the ground, Yang Yi slammed her against the ground. Bang! The ground collapsed while blood sprayed towards the surroundings. How dare you? The experts of the Dark Sky Sect were infuriated when they recovered from their shock, and they charged at Yang Yi. Suddenly, Yang Yi stomped his foot down against the woman's head, and then he looked up at the experts of the Dark Sky Sect. Take another step forward and I'll crush her head. Don't you dare. One of the old men shouted furiously. Do you realize that she's... Suddenly, the old man's voice stopped abruptly because Yang Yi had started to exert force with his leg, and the woman's head immediately sunk into the ground. Yang Yi looked up at the old man while a slight smile curled up on the corners of his mouth. Do you want to try me? You! The old man's face was absolutely ferocious, but he didn't dare speak another word. He was very afraid of infuriating Yang Yi and causing the woman's head to explode. Yang Yi withdrew his gaze and looked down at the woman beneath his feet. What did you have to do this? I was speaking nicely to you, yet you refused to listen. Now it's awkward for everyone. As he spoke, Yang Yi waved his right hand, and the blue pendant on her chest and her spatial ring immediately flew into his grasp. Yang Yi swept through its contents and couldn't help but pucker his lips at its contents. Her identity wasn't ordinary, but he felt that she was quite poor. She only had a little over 300 violet crystals. As for miscellaneous items, she had quite a bit of them, including treasures and techniques. However, most of them were just at the divine rank. Yang Yi shook his head and flicked the spatial ring over to Nan Shuang. That's for you. Nan Shuang glanced at its contents, and then her breathing immediately quickened. A few hundred violet crystals. It would take me so many years to accumulate. Her hands were trembling slightly after he tossed the spatial ring to her. His gaze descended onto the blue pendant in his grasp and nodded slightly. It really was at the quasi-emperor rank, but it was useless to him, because it wasn't even as strong as his body. Yang Yi flicked it over to Nan Shuang as well. It's yours. The others here couldn't help but be visibly moved. That pendant is a quasi-emperor rank treasure. Yet he gave it away just like that. Nan Shuang was quite stunned as well. She hadn't expected Yang Yi to even give her a quasi-emperor rank treasure. After all, it could be sold for 10,000 violet crystals at the very least. But he'd given 10,000 violet crystals to her just like that. Nan Shuang was dumbstruck as she gazed at the pendant on her palm. Meanwhile, there was envy in Gulan and the others' eyes as they glanced at Yang Yi and Nan Shuang. After all, based on the woman in a blue dress identity, the spatial ring definitely had quite a few treasures in it. Moreover, that wasn't even the end of it. That blue pendant was a quasi-emperor rank treasure, but Yang Yi had casually given it to Nan Shuang. But while they felt envious, they felt even more joy. They were happy for Nan Shuang. Yang Yi looked up one of the white-robed old men and said, Do you want to keep her alive? The white-robed old man stared fixedly at Yang Yi. You'll die. A.H. Meanwhile, the woman beneath Yang Ye's foot let out a shrill and miserable cry, and her head had sunken fully beneath the surface. How dare you? The white-robed old man was furious, and he was about to attack. But Yang Yi suddenly said, Come on. Let's see if you arrive first or her head explodes first. The white-robed old man took a deep breath and worked hard to make himself calm down. After that, he gazed at Yang Yi and said, What do you want? 5,000 violet crystals. Give me 5,000 violet crystals and I'll release her. Yang Yi looked the old man in the eyes and said, Don't try to bargain with me and don't start talking nonsense. I don't have any patience. If you think I wouldn't dare to kill her, then you can give me a try. The white-robed old man stared at Yang Yi in silence. Yang Yi was looking at the old man as well, but he started to exert force with his foot. Meanwhile, the woman's weak voice arose from beneath Yang Ye's foot. Give it to him. Yang Yi looked down at her and smiled. How sensible! As he spoke, he gazed at the old man and stretched out his hand. Meanwhile, Yi Luyun suddenly walked over to Yang Ye's side and spoke softly. We can threaten her and leave safely. Yang Yi glanced at Yi Luyun, and then he gazed at the white-robed old man. Yi Luyun's pupils constricted slightly, and she gained a slight understanding of Yang Ye's true motives. The old man glanced at Yang Yi, and then he turned around to look at the other 4 old men. They hesitated before withdrawing a spatial ring each. But it seemed to still be insufficient, so they asked the other disciples of the Dark Sky Sect to gather their violet crystals as well. In the end, the white-robed old man walked over to Xianxia while holding a spatial ring in his hand. The old man said, "Let her go first." Xianxia replied, "Do you have the right to bargain with me?" The old man gazed at Xianxia for a long time before he flicked the spatial ring over to Xianxia. Xianxia glanced at its contents before taking it in his grasp. After that, he removed his foot and moved aside. "See, I really keep my promises." Just as Yi Luyun had said, they could leave by threatening her. However, he wouldn't do that. Why? Because everyone was selfish. If he threatened the woman and led them away, they would merely thank him at most, and some might not even thank him. After they leave, they would flee immediately. After that, he, Xianxia, and the Sword Alliance would have to face the Dark Sky Sect's revenge. At that time, they wouldn't come and help. They would just flee as far as they could. Simply speaking, they were merely following him with the intention of using him. Xianxia was no fool. He felt that they could all live, but they had to bear the trouble that came with it as well. The white-robed old man's figure flashed and hurriedly grabbed the woman from the ground. At this moment, everyone was able to see her appearance clearly. Her features had warped and were stained with blood. When compared to before, her appearance was simply worlds apart, and it was quite terrifying as well. The woman's gaze descended onto Xianxia, and it was filled with resentment. Meanwhile, Xianxia ignored her and turned around to look at Nan Shuang. "Don't fight later. Just follow me. Understand?" Nan Shuang blinked, and she didn't really understand why Xianxia said that. Suddenly, the woman in a blue dress gazed at Nan Shuang and spoke ferociously. "Bitch! I'll make living worse than death for you. Besides that woman, kill everyone else here. Kill them all. Don't let even a single one of them live." The white-robed old man's face fell when he heard her. She was brainless, but he wasn't, of course. Under such circumstances, it was best for the Dark Sky Sect to take a step back for now and let them go, and then get even with them later. Because while all the people here were lousy mercenaries and independent cultivators, the combined strength of the experts here surpassed the combined strength of their forces. But he knew that he couldn't dissuade her because she wasn't in her right mind right now. The 5 old men at the quasi-emperor realm were slightly hesitant, but the experts behind them didn't dare to disobey her orders. So they immediately charged at Xianxia and the others. Xianxia turned around to gaze at the group behind him. "Do all of you want to die?" They immediately replied, "No." Xianxia nodded and said, "If you don't want to die, then follow me and kill our way out." As he spoke, Xianxia turned around and shot forward explosively. He charged at the experts from the Dark Sky Sect. When they saw Xianxia lead the charge, the others who were originally hesitating had immediately stopped hesitating and charged over. At this moment, they had no way to avoid this. Presently, while they would offend the Dark Sky Sect, they would be able to stay alive now and have a chance at survival in the future. But if they didn't attack, then they would die right now. They had no choice but to attack. Yi Luyun gazed at Xianxia. She'd figured out his intentions earlier. She knew that he wanted to tie them all together. Even though she knew about Xianxia's scheme, it was done so openly. Many others here were aware of Xianxia's intentions, but they had no other choice as well. Because if they didn't follow Xianxia into battle, then the members of the Dark Sky Sect would annihilate them. But if they joined forces, then they would have a chance to survive. Yi Luyun sighed softly, glanced at Xianxia who was leading the charge, and didn't hesitate a moment longer. She led the Soul Eater mercs in a charge at the experts from the Dark Sky Sect. Once they saw Yi Luyun's group charge, the Snow Lion mercs and the other mercenary groups stopped hesitating, and they immediately led their groups forward. The quasi-emperors of the Dark Sky Sect stopped hesitating when they saw Xianxia's group attack, and they hurriedly counterattacked. Because the other experts of the Dark Sky Sect would be slaughtered if they didn't join the battle. "Kill! We'll kill our way out." The countless people behind Xianxia roared in unison. All of them were like desperados, so they were definitely experienced when it came to fighting with their lives on the line. Especially when they were being led by Xianxia. Their aura was absolutely powerful. "Get that woman! Get her!" The woman in a blue dress was pointing at Nan Shuang and shouting ferociously. As soon as she gave the order, countless experts from the Dark Sky Sect charged at Nan Shuang. However, they were blasted away before they could even get within 30 m of her. And then numerous piles of mush appeared in the air. Nan Shuang gazed at Yang Yi, who stood before her, and clenched her fists. I can fight." Yang Yi turned around to glance at her and smiled. "I know. You've killed many people. Ha ha ha." Yang Yi immediately turned around and vanished once he finished speaking. He was in front of the woman in a blue dress when his figure appeared again. The woman was horrified, but she was no fool. Her reaction wasn't slow, and she slammed both her palms at Yang Yi. A ray of dazzling blue light suddenly erupted from her palm, but it had only just emerged when it was blasted apart by a punch from Yang Yi. Her pupils constricted. She swiftly stomped her right foot against the ground and shot backwards. However, her figure had just started moving backwards when Yang Yi appeared in front of her again, and then his hand clamped down on her throat. "How dare you!" The white-robed old man was furious at the sight of it, and he disregarded the quasi-emperor who was fighting him and shot towards Yang Yi. "Kill our way out." But Yang Yi paid no attention to the old man, and he just held the woman by her throat as he shot towards the distance. "Kill!" Countless roared with fury as they followed closely behind Yang Yi. It didn't take long for them to kill their way out under Yang Ye's lead. Some of the independent cultivators intended to leave immediately upon charging out of there, but they hadn't gone far before the experts of the Dark Sky Sect annihilated them. This made many who'd intended to flee to instantly abandon such thoughts. Presently, they were all together, so their strength far surpassed the experts of the Dark Sky Sect. But once they separated, they wouldn't be a match for the Dark Sky Sect's forces at all. After they traveled almost 3 kilometers away, the experts of the Dark Sky Sect were still following closely behind them, and it made the expressions of many become quite unsightly. In the beginning, it was just as Yang Yi had said, and they just wanted to leave. They had no intention to offend the Dark Sky Sect. However, the Dark Sky Sect insisted on killing them. This made killing intent arise within many of them. Even though the Dark Sky Sect was strong, even the nicest person had a temper, let alone people like them. As if he knew what they were thinking, Yang Yi suddenly stopped and turned around to gaze at the experts from the Dark Sky Sect who were pursuing them. "Everyone, killing one or all makes no difference. Since they insist on killing us, then do we really have to worry about anything else? Kill them. Even if we die later, we'll still have taken a few down with us." As he spoke, he raised the woman in a blue dress and tossed her over to Yi Luyun. "Watch her." As soon as he finished speaking, Yang Yi shot towards the experts of the Dark Sky Sect. Yuan Feng and the other members of the Sword didn't hesitate to follow Yang Yi. As for the others, they were slightly hesitant. But it didn't take long for Yi Luyun to wave her right hand, and then the experts of the Soul Eater mercs hurriedly charged over. After that, the others from the Snow Lion mercs charged forward as well. When they saw all the powerful groups charging forward, the others stopped hesitating and followed the group. They didn't want to go against the Dark Sky Sect, but the Dark Sky Sect was determined to kill them. Moreover, many of them people here understood that there was no chance for them to be reconciled with the Dark Sky Sect. Based on the way the Dark Sky Sect did things, it would definitely not let them go. Since that was how it was, exercising forbearance and avoiding conflict was stupid. Meanwhile, the experts of the Dark Sky Sect had gloomy expressions on their faces when they saw Yang Yi counterattack. Even though the mercenaries and independent cultivators here were nothing worth mentioning, their joint forces wasn't something that the experts of the Dark Sky Sect could resist. They'd launched a pursuit when they saw the independent cultivators and mercenaries flee just now because they felt that the independent cultivators and mercenaries merely wanted to flee and wouldn't dare to truly fight and kill them, because doing that represented going against the Dark Sky Sect. However, those fellows had actually launched a counterattack against them now. Meanwhile, one of the white-robed old men spoke in a low voice. "Retreat for now." One of the other quasi-emperors by the old man's side hesitated. "But the young miss." The white-robed old man shook his head. "Retreat for now. We'll decide what to do once the experts of our sect arrive. Otherwise, all of us will die here. As soon as he finished speaking, he took the others with him as he fled towards the distance. Xianxia stopped when he saw the white-robed old man's group flee, and the others behind him had stopped as well. Even though the experts of the Dark Sky Sect had fled, their faces were absolutely gloomy. The Dark Sky Sect, a diamond rank power that had emperors. After a moment of silence passed, Xianxia suddenly turned around and gazed at them. I wonder what all of you plan to do from now on? All of them gazed at Xianxia. Xianxia glanced at them and said, We've killed so many disciples of the Dark Sky Sect, so it will definitely not let us go. I think that all of you should be very clearly aware of that. Aren't you very great? Meanwhile, the woman restrained by Yi Luyun suddenly laughed with a fierce expression on her face. What? You're afraid now? Xianxia gazed at her and said, I know that your status in the Dark Sky Sect is definitely not low. However, it's best for you to keep a low profile right now. My temper isn't very good, and I might act rashly. The consequence of that is that your head will be separated from your neck. So think about your head. It's best for you to keep a low profile. She gazed at him. Resentment still filled her eyes, but she didn't dare to speak another word. Xianxia gazed at the others and said, If all of you don't have a plan, I have one. I wonder if all of you are willing to hear it. Meanwhile, Elder Mo from the Snow Lion Merc spoke in a low voice, Please go ahead. The others nodded and looked at Xianxia as well. While Xianxia was just a saint, no one dared to underestimate him. It wasn't terrifying for a quasi-emperor to kill a quasi-emperor, but it was quite terrifying when a saint killed a quasi-emperor. They were no fools. If someone could kill a quasi-emperor at the saint realm and even do so at such a young age, would that person be ordinary? They would never believe that Xianxia had no backing. Xianxia nodded and said, The Dark Sky Sect won't spare us, and that's certain. I think all of you won't be hoping to get lucky as well, right? Any one of us or any one of the groups here are absolutely unable to fight the Dark Sky Sect. So, if we want to live, then we have to join forces. What do all of you think? The expressions of many had become slightly off when they heard Xianxia. All of them were old geezers who'd lived for hundreds of years. So how could they not understand Xianxia? Meanwhile, Xianxia added, All of you are intelligent, so I won't beat around the bush. I've established a group called the Sword Alliance, and I hope that all of you will join it. It's fine if you don't, and the relationship we've formed from overcoming the difficulties we faced earlier will not fade away. Yuan Feng and the other members of the Sword Alliance immediately walked over and stood behind Xianxia when they heard him. The others fell silent. Meanwhile, Yi Luyun suddenly asked, What's the benefit of joining the Sword Alliance? Why should we join it? Xianxia smiled and patted his chest. In an instant, a small white dragon emerged from there, and then the spirit energy in the surroundings immediately thickened. A spirit vein. The expressions of everyone here changed at the sight of this scene, and they gazed at Xianxia with disbelief. Obviously, they hadn't imagined that Xianxia actually possessed a spirit vein. It was the same for the others from the Sword Alliance. But it was naturally an extremely good piece of news to them. Xianxia stated, This isn't that divine-grade spirit vein, and it's just a saint-grade spirit vein. I believe that everyone will be able to cultivate much faster with this spirit vein in our possessing. That's the benefits. As for why you should join my Sword Alliance, I've already explained it. We'll only be able to fight the Dark Sky Sect by joining forces. Even our joint forces won't be able to resist the Dark Sky Sect. Elder Mo spoke in a low voice. They have emperors. Just a single emperor is enough to crush all of us. The others nodded as well because emperors were experts who could instill despair in them. Meanwhile, Xianxia suddenly said, I'll deal with the emperors. All of them were stunned and thought they were hearing things. Yi Luyun glanced at Xianxia and said, Say that one more time. Xianxia said, I said that I'll deal with the emperors. Everyone here was at a loss for words. Meanwhile, Nan Shuang spoke softly. They have at least 3 emperors. Can you fight 3? All of them gazed at Xianxia and awaited his answer. 3. Xianxia was in quite the predicament. If he said he couldn't at a time like this, then it would be quite embarrassing. After all of them were looking at him and waiting for his answer. Xianxia hesitated for an instant before he waved his hand and spoke heroically. "It's just 3. That's a piece of cake." Suddenly, a terrifying wave of pressure descended from above. As soon as it did, many comparatively weaker cultivators instantly fell flat on the ground. It was the aura of an emperor. It didn't take long for an old man in linen robes to appear in the sky. The old man looked down at them while a boundless aura surged out from within him and pressed down upon them. An emperor. It's an emperor from the dark sky sect. The countenances of everyone here turned ghastly pale. But it didn't take long for them to look at Xianxia. Xianxia felt quite speechless in his heart. They would naturally not believe that Xianxia could fight 3 emperors on his own. After all, not to mention 3, they wouldn't even believe that he could fight one. Because being able to fight quasi-emperors at the Saint Realm was heaven-defying enough. As for fighting emperors at the Saint Realm, it wasn't unprecedented. But it only occurred once in a few thousand years. Of course, that was in the current Dark Hell continent. If it was the Dark Hell continent from tens of thousands of years ago, it had countless geniuses. So, not to mention their strength in Dark Hell continent, their geniuses were even amongst the strongest in the other regions. They didn't believe that Xianxia could fight an emperor, but they felt that Xianxia definitely had a trump card or the backing of someone or some power. In short, Xianxia was their last hope right now. Bang! Suddenly, void rank intent surged out from within Xianxia and swept up into the air to resist the gray-robed old man's terrifying aura. Void rank sword intent. The others were shocked at the sight of this scene, because they'd never imagined that Xianxia actually possessed void rank sword intent. A trace of surprise flashed through the old man's eyes because there were very few sword cultivators on the continent, especially strong sword cultivators. "You have some ability, but you're still too weak." The old man took a step forward, and his aura rained down and instantly suppressed Xianxia's void rank sword intent. "Is that so?" A smile curled up on the corners of Xianxia's mouth, and he took a step forward as well. Void rank slaughter intent shot up into the air. As soon as this second intent appeared, the old man's aura was instantly pushed back. Void rank slaughter intent. Everyone here was astounded. He possesses 2 types of intents. They were beyond shocked. This even included Yi Luyun, Mu Kanglin, and the other quasi-emperors amongst them. Obviously, they hadn't expected Xianxia to have comprehended both void rank sword intent and slaughter intent. 2 types of void rank intents. Where did such a monstrous genius come from? Meanwhile, there was excitement on the faces of Yuan Feng and the others, because they knew that Xianxia was a peerless genius, and besides a power like the World Devastator cult, there was no other power that could foster such a genius. The old man looked Xianxia in the eyes and asked, "Who are you?" Xianxia replied, "Who I am isn't important." Xianxia pointed at the woman in a blue dress and said, "We actually have no intention to go against the Dark Sky Sect, but it couldn't be helped. She was too brainless and insisted on killing us. So, for the sake of our survival, we had no choice but to kill our way out of their encirclement. Now, allow me to display my sincerity once more. I'll give her back to you, and we'll let bygones be bygones, all right? Are you joking?" The old man continued. "You killed so many members of my sect and even took one of our members hostage, yet you want to let bygones be bygones? Don't you think it's very laughable?" Xianxia looked the old man in the eye and said, "We have no intention to go against the Dark Sky Sect, but your people insisted on killing us, so we had no choice but to fight back. We couldn't have just stood by idly and waited for death to arrive, right?" "How laughable!" The old man laughed with ridicule. "Are you trying to reason with me?" Xianxia nodded. "Could it be that you don't want to? Reason? What's that?" The old man had a wisp of disdain on the corners of his mouth. "You've lived for quite some time. Have your seniors not taught you that the fist is always in the right? If my Dark Sky Sect wants to kill you, then you should bare your neck and receive death." The others behind Xianxia had utterly unsightly expressions on their faces when they heard the old man. Meanwhile, Nan Shuang walked over to Xianxia's side and spoke softly. "Stupid! You can't try to reason with people in this world. The more you try, the more they'll think that you can be bullied and do all they can to bully you. Reason can only be used when both sides have almost equal strength, and that's the only time that it's possible for both sides to sit down and reason with each other. Or perhaps after you've crushed them, then they will beg you to reason with them even if you refuse to do so. Yang Yi rubbed Nin Shuang's head and spoke softly. In the past, some said that my character is too extreme, and I don't know how to act according to the situation. I cause minor incidents to become huge incidents, and I make huge incidents go out of control. There are many occasions that even I feel that it's true. Yang Yi chuckled at this point and said, but I've noticed that what they call acting according to the situation is mostly just the act of making a compromise to save a situation. If others want to hit me, I can't resist them, and I even have to bring my face to them so that they can strike it, because I would suffer endless problems once I hit back. In that way, the problem would grow more and more serious, just like what happened earlier. They wanted to kill us, but we can't kill them because once we do, then the problem we face would grow greater and greater. But we would die if we don't kill them. Yang Yi gazed at Nan Shuang at this point. Tell me, how should we act according to such situations? Nan Shuang thought for a moment and said, kill! Kill until no one dares to offend us. Just like the World Devastator cult. No one dares to offend them because they are strong. Yang Yi roared with laughter and said, little girl, you're right. I, Yang Yi, refuse to make compromises to save the situation throughout my lifetime. If they dare to bully me, then I'll repay it tenfold. If they dare to try and kill me, then I'll kill that person even if it's the Heaven Tao. As soon as he finished speaking, Yang Yi walked over to the woman in a blue dress. Her expression changed as she thought that Yang Yi intended to kill her. She was about to speak when Yang Yi grabbed her by the shoulder and tossed her over to the old man. Everyone here was stunned. Even the woman and the old man were stunned because none had expected Yang Yi to do that. Yang Yi condensed an intense sword in his grasp as he looked up at the old man. I've always looked down upon those who use women to threaten others. I, Yang Yi, disdain to use a woman to threaten my enemies. If your dark sky sect wants to kill us, then come do it. Now. The old man took a deep and long glance at Yang Yi before he said, those women around you will be spared later. As soon as he finished speaking, the old man tapped his finger forward. A pitch-black finger tore through space and carried a terrifying aura as it arrived above Yang Yi. And it was about to squash Yang Yi into mush. OM. A sword howl resounded abruptly, and then a ray of light shot up into the sky and struck the black finger. The black finger shook violently and shattered apart while the ray of light didn't slow down at all as it shot straight at the old man. The old man waved his right hand, and the woman instantly vanished on the spot. After that, he clenched his right fist and slammed it in Yang Ye's direction. Bang! A dazzling ray of light flashed out from his fist, and it slammed against Yang Ye's attack. Suddenly, the old man's pupils constricted, and his body moved sideways slightly. After that, the others watched with astonishment as the old man's right arm flew up into the air. Meanwhile, Yang Yi was 300 m behind the old man. The others were stunned on the spot. It was the ultimate version of death by a thought. The first attack was just a distraction, and Yang Ye's true objective had been utilizing death by a thought. He naturally wouldn't hold back against an emperor, and he used all his strength as soon as he attacked. However, he'd still underestimated emperors slightly. Even though he'd killed numerous emperors in the past, it was under the circumstances that he joined forces with Xianxia. Yet now, it was clearly not realistic for him to instantly kill an emperor with ease while he was all by himself. Even if he was a saint now and his strength had improved tremendously, it still wasn't realistic. The old man turned around to gaze at Yang Yi while his arm was being restored at a visible speed. He gazed at Yang Yi with a solemn expression in his eyes. I really did. He was about to speak when Yang Yi withdrew an ancient sheath, and then sheathed and drew his sword in an instant. A ray of sword energy shot forward, and it was swift as a bolt of lightning. Space was sliced apart in its wake, forming a very long spatial rift in the sky. It was 150 overlapped heaven rens. Once he attained the Saint Realm, he was able to overlap 150 heavenrens at once. Coupled with the boost provided by his dual intense and physical strength, the strength of that attack was extremely terrifying. The old man's face immediately became extremely serious when he saw the ray of sword energy that was approaching him. Spatial concentration. As soon as he spoke, the old man waved both his hands, and the space around him instantly started to concentrate in layers. In an instant, the space before him had overlapped by at least 100 layers. It even caused the old man's figure to seem warped when the others looked at him from the other side. Meanwhile, Xianxia's sword energy slammed against the overlapped layers of space. Bang! A loud explosion resounded through the sky. Xianxia's sword energy sliced through the space before the old man, but it didn't take long for it to stop. After that, the space there suddenly started to warp. In an instant, Xianxia's sword energy was crushed into bits. Meanwhile, Xianxia stomped his right foot against the space below him, and his figure shook before he transformed into a ray of light that swept towards the old man. Bang! The space before the old man collapsed in an instant, and then countless rays of light flickered incessantly through the sky and surrounded the old man. It didn't take long for numerous explosions to resound through the sky, and the space there was even trembling without end. Meanwhile, the others on the ground below were absolutely shocked as they witnessed the battle occurring in the sky above. It was a battle between a saint and an emperor. Something that they'd only heard of had actually occurred right before their eyes. Bang! Meanwhile, a muffled explosion resounded in the sky, and then a figure was blasted away. The spectators' hearts shook when they witnessed this scene, because that figure was Xianxia. Xianxia finally stopped after flying almost 3 kilometers back. Xianxia looked down at his chest, and he saw a palm print there, but it was very shallow. He looked up at the old man, and he saw the old man's face had a bloody injury on it. It was an injury created by sword energy. "I really did underestimate you." The old man clenched his fists and said, "But don't worry, I won't do that again." As soon as he finished speaking, the space around Xianxia and the old man instantly started to ripple like a surging river. Meanwhile, the intense sword in Xianxia's grasp dispersed slowly, and he unclenched his fists. The fire dragon gauntlets appeared over his hands as he turned around to look at Nan Shuang. A slight smile curled up onto the corners of his mouth as he said, "Actually, emperors are nothing great as well." As soon as he finished speaking, he clenched his right fist slowly. Crack! A clear and resounding crack arose. The space around his fist had cracked apart. Numerous arm-thick cracks appeared throughout the sky, and they were spreading rapidly towards the surroundings. In next to no time, the space in an area of over 5 kilometers around Xianxia and the old man in linen robes had cracked apart. At the same time, an extremely powerful aura rained down like a million mountains. Countless people in the surroundings were horrified, and they retreated towards the surroundings. The old man's face had become extremely solemn as well. Even though Xianxia hadn't launched the attack, the energy contained within Xianxia's fist caused his heart to palpitate. Is he really a saint? The old man didn't think further. He raised his hands and made a clawing motion. In an instant, the space throughout the sky was repaired in an instant, and then he shouted, "Mince!" As soon as his voice resounded, the space around Xianxia instantly started to twist and warp. The mincing force created in the space around him caused Xianxia to immediately frown. At the same time, his body had actually started to warp as well. A ferocious expression appeared on the corners of Xianxia's mouth, and he swiftly slammed his right fist forward. Bang! A wave of terrifying force surged out like a torrent from Xianxia's fist, and the space before him collapsed in an instant. The others in the surroundings were horrified and fled madly towards the surroundings. They didn't dare to come close to the area where Xianxia and the old man were. A very long time passed before the space in the sky returned to normal, and both Xianxia and the old man appeared once more before them. At this moment, the old man was very far away from Xianxia, and there was a wisp of scarlet red on the corner of his mouth. "He's injured." Tempestuous waves instantly surged through the hearts of all the spectators. It didn't take long for them to look at Xianxia. On the contrary, There didn't seem to be any difference in Xianxia's appearance. It seemed like he was completely fine. The old man lost? The old man was staring at Xianxia while blood was still seeping out from the corner of his mouth. Meanwhile, Xianxia suddenly started walking towards the old man, and then a pillar of blood shot up into the sky from within him. After that, a blood-red sword appeared in Xianxia's right grasp before he sheathed it. A terrifying aura and monstrous baleful energy and slaughter intent swept through the sky, and even the old man couldn't help but take a step back. Xianxia gazed at the old man while a ferocious smile arose on the corners of his mouth. This attack of mine once killed an emperor. Old man, do you want to give it a try? The old man stared at Xianxia as he said, Good, very good. I really misjudged you. As he spoke, blood started flowing incessantly from the corner of his mouth. Xianxia asked again, Are you going to try it or not? The old man took a deep and long glance at Xianxia, and then he transformed into a ray of light that vanished into the horizon. He'd fled. The others' mouths opened wide while they felt completely dazed, because an emperor had actually been heavily injured and fled in a battle with a saint. If they hadn't witnessed it with their own eyes, they would have absolutely not believed it. However, no matter what had happened, this incident could be said to have come to an end for now, at least. They heaved a sigh of relief. However, a few figures suddenly shot out from the gorge in the distance. It was those experts from Doomsday City. The black-robed man who led the ground glanced at them, and his gaze descended upon Xianxia in the end. He was slightly stunned when he saw Xianxia was completely blood-red, and he said, You're actually still alive. Xianxia gazed at the black-robed man and asked, Do you want me dead that badly? The black-robed man's eyes narrowed slightly. It's fine. Since you're alive, I'll kill you again. As soon as he finished speaking, the black-robed man was about to attack. However, a ray of blood-red light flashed, and then his figure stiffened on the spot while his eyes opened wide. An instant later, his head tilted to the side and rolled off his neck. Blood shot up like a fountain. He'd been killed in an instant. A quasi-emperor had been killed in an instant. The remaining experts of Doomsday City were shocked, and they gazed at Xianxia like he was a monster. Meanwhile, another ray of blood-red light flashed, and the head of another quasi-emperor flew into the air. This time, the two remaining quasi-emperors from Doomsday City didn't dare to stay stunned on the spot, and they immediately turned around and vanished into the horizon. Xianxia was about to pursue them when Yi Luyun suddenly appeared in front of him. Keeping them alive is useful to us. Yi Luyun stopped abruptly at this point, and she couldn't help but take a few steps back, because Xianxia's gaze at her carried terrifying killing intent. Xianxia started walking towards Yi Luyun while his sword trembled. Yi Luyun was horrified. Fortunately, a small white head suddenly emerged from Xianxia's chest. The small white head glanced at the surroundings, and then stretched out her little claw and tapped Xianxia's chest. After that, it returned back into Xianxia's chest. Meanwhile, Xianxia stopped moving and closed his eyes slowly. A long time passed before the blood-red glow started to slowly retract into him. Around 10 breaths of time later, Xianxia opened his eyes, and they were clear once more. Yi Luyun instantly heaved a sigh of relief at the sight of this, because she felt like she was about to die just now. Even though she was a quasi-emperor, she didn't have even an ounce of confidence to face Xianxia. Xianxia shook his head slightly, and then he glanced at the others. Everyone, I represent the Sword Alliance in extending a sincere invitation to all of you to join us. Those who are willing will be one of our own from now on. If Xianxia, gain something, all of you will definitely have a share as well. As for those who are unwilling, it's fine. We'll just part peacefully. All of them fell silent. Xianxia's gaze descended onto Yi Luyun. Miss Yi, what do you think? Yi Luyun fell silent for a long time before she said, I'm willing to join the Sword Alliance. Xianxia's strength was comparable to an emperor. Even she refused to believe that such a person didn't possess the backing of a mysterious power. Presently, all of them were definitely in the Dark Sky Sect's blacklist. If they didn't find someone to rely on, then all they could do was flee. Moreover, they had to flee after disbanding their groups. because it was impossible to flee in a large group as they would be a huge target. Besides that, they would have to go into hiding from now onwards. She didn't want to go through such a life. Yang Yi revealed a slight smile when he heard her agree, and then he waved his right hand. The fire dragon bow instantly appeared before Yi Luyun. Miss Yi, I obtained this bow by chance. It should be useful to you. A quasi-emperor rank bow. Everyone here was visibly moved at the sight of this. It's a quasi-emperor rank treasure. That fellow actually gave it away just like that? Isn't he too generous? Yi Luyun was slightly stunned as well. She hadn't expected Yang Yi to actually give her a quasi-emperor rank treasure right away. After all, it was an extremely precious treasure even in large powers. But Yang Yi had given one to her just like that. Yi Luyun shot a glance that carried complicated emotions at Yang Yi. And then she put the bow away and said, "If you don't betray me, then I won't betray you." Yang Yi smiled. "We have a common goal, and that's to live and live well. Don't we?" Yi Luyun nodded and stood behind Yang Yi. When they saw Yi Luyun do that, the other members of the Soul Eater mercs hurriedly stood over behind Yang Yi as well. Meanwhile, Elder Mo stepped forward. "My Snow Lion mercs are willing to join as well." Yang Yi gazed at Elder Mo. "Welcome." Elder Mo cupped his fists to Yang Yi, and then he led his group over to stand behind Yang Yi. It didn't take long for more mercenary groups and independent cultivators to declare their willingness to join the Sword Alliance. In the end, 90% of them joined while the rest left. They didn't like being bound to something, or they had other intentions. So Yang Yi didn't force them and just let them leave. Yang Yi glanced at them, and he noticed that 10 of them were quasi-emperors. 10 quasi-emperors were clearly too few. After all, the quasi-emperors here were much more numerous than the Radiant Dimension. Moreover, this world had emperors. Besides that, he was very well aware that they might not have wholeheartedly joined the Sword Alliance. At this moment, they actually had no other choice, because they knew that the Dark Sky Sect would definitely not let them go. But they had nowhere to seek protection from. So they had no choice but to choose the Sword Alliance. Yang Yi was very well aware of that, but he didn't mind. Because while the Sword Alliance had the potential to grow, then he was confident that they would stay wholeheartedly in the future. He refused to believe that they would be willing to be mercenaries for their entire life. Meanwhile, Yi Luyun said, "What's your plan now?" Yang Yi gazed at her and replied, "Do you have any suggestions?" Yi Luyun pondered deeply for a moment and said, "We need a base right now. There's a small city around 50,000 kilometers from here, Cloudfall City. Because it's close to the desert, the spirit energy there is very scarce and practically non-existent. That's exactly why it's like a dead city. We have a spirit vein so we can slowly develop there." Yang Yi glanced at her and then he glanced at the others. "From this moment onward, Miss Yi is our Sword Alliance's." She's our Sword Alliance's counselor. Seeing her is like seeing me. If I'm not in the Sword Alliance, then she'll deal with everything in my place. The others were stunned when they heard Yang Yi, and it included Yi Luyun herself. She hadn't expected that Yang Yi would suddenly do that. After all, Yang Yi was giving authority away just like that, and it was huge authority. Meanwhile, a middle-aged man by Elder Mo's side spoke abruptly. "That isn't fair." Suddenly, Yang Yi gazed at him and said, "You seem to have not adjusted yourself to your new identity." The middle-aged man was stunned. Meanwhile, Yang Yi glanced at the others and said, "I'll discuss some things with everyone, but if I've decided something, then I hope that no one objects to it. Moreover, I hope that I don't have to make an example of someone to deter all of you. In the end, I'd like to remind all of you that you belong to the Sword Alliance now. Don't bring your habits of scheming and conspiring against each other into my Sword Alliance. Otherwise, I'll kill every single one of you who does that." All of them were visibly shocked, and then they fell silent. Yang Yi gazed at Yi Luyun. "Set out for Cloudfall City." Yi Luyun said, "I have one more question." Yang Yi replied, "Go on." Yi Luyun spoke softly, "Doomsday City and the Dark Sky Sect." Yang Yi waved his hand and said, "We're in a hopeless situation right now. All we can do is seek to survive it. So don't think too much about that. If they come, then we'll kill them, and we'll kill them until they dare not show themselves again. It's just that simple. Suddenly, numerous terrifying auras came from afar. They turned around and looked towards the source of it, and they saw a few dozen figures appear on the horizon. All of them were quasi-emperors. Yiliyun spoke solemnly. It's the experts of Doomsday City. Many of the people here had instantly turned ghastly pale. All of you leave first. As soon as he finished speaking, Xianxia turned around and started walking towards the group of quasi-emperors. Nan Shuang hurriedly shouted at him, "Where are you going?" Xianxia's voice resounded from afar. "To kill! My sword is starving." Nan Shuang shouted again. "There are so many of them." Xianxia's voice resounded once more from afar. "Only then can I kill to my heart's content." The others felt speechless when they heard him. "Let's go." Yiliyun didn't hesitate at all. She immediately gave the order and shot towards the distance. The others hesitated for a moment before quickly following her as well. Nan Shuang wanted to stay back, but she was dragged away by Mu Kanglin and the others. Meanwhile, Xianxia stopped moving, and 35 gray-robed cultivators stood not too far away from him. All of them were quasi-emperors. Quasi-emperors are numerous like dogs here. Xianxia tightened his grip on the ancient sheath as he gazed at the quasi-emperors here. Dark Hell Continent didn't have a heaven Dao, so it allowed many to attain the quasi-emperor realm. However, their quality couldn't compare to the Radiant Dimension. The quasi-emperors of the Radiant Dimension had survived their respective heavenly tribulations, and those who didn't possess sufficient strength had been obliterated by their heavenly tribulations. So, the strength of those who survived would definitely not be bad. As for the quasi-emperors of Dark Hell Continent, many of them weren't as strong as they should be, because they hadn't experienced any heavenly tribulations. Besides the huge improvement of his strength, that had been the other reason why he'd been able to kill quasi-emperors with such ease just now. The person who led the group before Xianxia was a gray-robed old man. The two other quasi-emperors from Doomsday City who'd fled earlier were standing by the old man's side. The gray-robed old man gazed at Xianxia and asked, "You killed the members of my Doomsday City?" Xianxia nodded. "I did." The old man's face instantly fell. "How dare you?" Xianxia didn't speak. He just condensed an intense sword, sheathed it, and then drew it swiftly. A ray of sword energy flashed forward while accompanied by a sword howl that shot up into the sky. It was 150 overlapped heaven rens. Moreover, it was even enhanced by void rank sword intent and slaughter intent. The space in its path was instantly torn open. Meanwhile, the gray-robed old man and the others' pupils constricted. Even though they were astounded, the gray-robed old man's reaction wasn't slow at all. The profound energy within him instantly surged into the black walking stick he held before he slammed it forward. Hiss! The walking stick was blasted apart in an instant. The gray-robed old man was horrified, and a strand of white light surged out from within him and collided with Xianxia's sword energy. Bang! An explosion resounded as the old man's figure was blasted 3 kilometers away. Moreover, his chest was in an utterly mangled state. When they witnessed this scene, the other quasi-emperors turned around to gaze at Xianxia and were about to attack. At the same time, Xianxia sheathed the intense sword again and gazed at them while revealing a ferocious smile. "Bring it!" Seriousness flashed through their faces as they gazed at Xianxia with slight fear. Even though Xianxia was just a saint, they didn't dare underestimate him at all. Because the gray-robed old man was the strongest amongst them. But even the gray-robed old man had almost been killed in an instant, so they would be utterly incapable of resisting that attack. But they were quasi-emperors at any rate, and there were so many of them. So, it was naturally impossible for them to be terrified by Xianxia just like that. Otherwise, they would truly be trash. They immediately charged at Xianxia. A sword howl resounded as Xianxia's figure transformed into a ray of light that vanished on the spot. After that, the head of the quasi-emperor at the front of the group instantly flew up into the air. Blood sprayed out like a fountain. A moment later, Xianxia stomped his right foot against the space beneath him, and he transformed into another ray of light that vanished on the spot. Another quasi-emperor's head flew into the air. After that, Xianxia transformed into a ray of light once more. In less than 5 breaths of time, 5 quasi-emperors had fallen. A ray of light flashed, and Xianxia appeared 3 kilometers away. He held the ancient sheath in his grasp, and there was an intense sword sheathed in it while his right hand was holding tightly onto the intense sword's hilt. He gazed at the experts from Doomsday City, while a trace of madness could be seen on his face. "Continue!" The experts from Doomsday City gazed at him with solemn expressions on their faces while fear filled their eyes. Not a single one of them dared to step forward. "That's a saint? That's an emperor. He kills quasi-emperors like slaughtering chicken." Suddenly, the gray-robed old man whom Xianxia had heavily injured in the beginning asked, "Who are you?" Xianxia glanced at the gray-robed old man while a cold smile curled up on the corners of his mouth. "Why don't you take a guess?" The gray-robed old man's face twitched. Meanwhile, Xianxia added, "You're not attacking? Then I'm leaving." Xianxia turned around and walked away once he finished speaking. "Stop right there." The gray-robed old man hurriedly shouted at Xianxia when he saw Xianxia turn around and try to leave. Suddenly, Xianxia turned around and drew his sword. A ray of sword energy shot at the old man. It was extremely swift to the point that the quasi-emperors here were practically incapable of catching sight of it. At the moment it appeared, the gray-robed old man was horrified, and his profound energy surged out and formed a barrier before him. Bang! A loud explosion resounded as the barrier before the old man shattered into pieces. At the same time, blood sprayed from the old man's mouth while his figure was blasted over 3 kilometers away. Once he stopped moving, he spat out a few more mouthfuls of blood in succession. Xianxia gazed at the group of quasi-emperors, laughed coldly, and then left. This time, not at a single one of them dared to stop him. After Xianxia left, one of the quasi-emperors walked over to the old man. "Elder Yu, that fellow's strength was extraordinary. His identity is definitely not ordinary." The old man's face was extremely gloomy. He remained silent for a long time before he turned around to gaze at one of the middle-aged men. "Was it really a ray of light from a sword that took the divine grade spirit vein in the ruins?" The middle-aged man nodded. "The tracks of the person who took it vanished after we pursued him for some time. But we saw that fellow from just now standing there instead. However, we ignored him because his cultivation was too low. Now it would seem like the divine grade spirit veins is definitely in his possession." The divine grade spirit vein. The gray-robed old man clenched his fists slowly. A long time passed before he said, "Come, let's return to the city first. We'll discuss this matter after the city governor and the others return from the ruins of the Sword God's palace." As soon as he finished speaking, all of them turned around and vanished into the horizon. Xianxia sat cross-legged in the sky, and there was a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth. At the same time, his body started to crack apart. Could he defeat over 30 quasi-emperors? The answer was naturally no. He wasn't invincible. He'd relied on the ultimate version of death by a thought to kill 5 quasi-emperors in succession just now. But his body suffered a certain amount of harm with every execution of death by a thought's ultimate version. Even though it was strong, the price he paid wasn't small. Of course, the main reason was because he'd fought an emperor before the battle. He'd utilized the Brink laws in that battle. Even though he'd injured the emperor in the end, his body had suffered a certain amount of harm as well. It could be said that he was already injured after his battle with that emperor. So, overexhausting himself just now could be considered as piling even more injuries onto himself. So, he would actually have no choice but to flee if they decided to risk their lives against him. Fortunately, he had sufficient violet crystals now, so such injuries were nothing to him. An hour later, Xianxia's injuries had been practically healed by the primordial violet energy within him. He glanced at the surroundings, frowned, and then closed his eyes. A long time passed before he opened his eyes again, and he spoke softly. "Was I mistaken?" His figure flashed and vanished into the horizon once he finished speaking. Right after Xianxia left, a black-robed figure suddenly appeared where Xianxia had been a moment ago. "Interesting. Truly interesting. I wonder if he's the person I've been looking for. I've been to a few thousand worlds by now. I hope he doesn't disappoint me. As soon as he finished speaking, the black-robed man vanished on the spot. Not long after the black-robed man vanished, Xianxia appeared there once more. He gazed for a long time at the spot the black-robed man had stood at, and then he vanished on the spot. Cloudfall City. Xianxia frowned when he arrived at Cloudfall City, because Yi Luyun and the others were being surrounded at the entrance of the city. Xianxia glanced through the area and noticed that the strengths of the group which had surrounded Yi Luyun and the others was actually not bad. There were almost 17 quasi-emperors and a few thousand saints amongst them. Xianxia didn't hesitate to go to Yi Luyun's side. The members of the Sword Alliance instantly heaved sighs of relief when they saw Xianxia return safely. Could be said that Xianxia was their pillar of confidence and support right now. Xianxia gazed at Yi Luyun. What's going on? We were too late. The Cyclops mercs took Cloudfall City. Yi Luyun sent Xianxia a voice transmission at this point. They have a bad reputation, especially their leader, Song Jiji. There are no limits to what he's capable of. He seduced his past leader's wife, Ma Rong, to kill his past leader and seize control over the mercenary group. He's ruthless and infamous, so we didn't want to offend him and intended to leave. However, he refused to allow it and insisted on us paying him 5,000 violet crystals as toll. Besides that, he wants me, Kanglin, and Nan Shuang. Xianxia turned around to glance at the middle-aged man who led the group. The middle-aged man was a quasi-emperor as well. His eyes were covered by translucent patches, and he carried a large saber on his shoulder. Besides that, he had a vicious and wretched appearance. It was clear at first sight that he wasn't a good person. Xianxia withdrew his gaze and said, "First come, first served. Since they were here first, then let's leave." Yi Luyun glanced at Xianxia and nodded. Right when Xianxia and the others were about to leave, Song Jiji suddenly spoke from afar. "You're going to leave just like that?" Xianxia stopped and turned around to look at Song Jiji. "What? You want us to stay for food?" "Food." A slight smile curled up on the corners of Song Jiji's mouth. "There's no food here, but we do have shit. Do you want some?" Xianxia gazed at Song Jiji. He was about to speak when Song Jiji suddenly chuckled. "Could it be that you really want to eat shit? Can't be, right? You actually have such interests." As he spoke, the other members of the Cyclops mercs instantly started roaring with laughter. Xianxia turned around and gazed at Yi Luyun. "Order the others to prepare some shit. Right, get 5 kilograms of it. I'm gonna make him eat it mouthful by mouthful. Not one mouthful less." Yi Luyun was speechless. When she saw the serious expression on Xianxia's face, Yi Luyun hesitated for a moment before she turned around to gaze at one of the people who stood far away from her. That person nodded slightly and left. Song Jiji was first stunned when he heard Xianxia, and then he dug his ear and asked, "What did you say? I didn't hear it clearly. Repeat it again." "All right." Suddenly, Xianxia vanished on the spot, and he was in front of Song Jiji when he appeared once more. Song Jiji's pupils constricted as he hadn't expected Xianxia to attack without saying anything and even do so with such speed, because even he was only able to see a blurry shadow flash before him. Song Jiji was caught off guard and unable to dodge, so he had no choice but to wave his saber swiftly. However, Xianxia didn't try to dodge it at all. He just allowed the saber to strike his head while his fist slammed against Song Jiji's chest. Clang! Bang! Xianxia's figure didn't move at all, but Song Jiji's figure curved forward as his figure was blasted flying. But Xianxia suddenly appeared before him just a moment later. Song Jiji was horrified and swung his saber once more, but Xianxia still didn't dodge and just slammed his fist forward again. Clang! Pooh! Xianxia's figure still didn't move from the impact, but Song Jiji spat out a mouthful of blood while his figure was blasted flying again. Xianxia suddenly appeared in front of Song Jiji when his figure had just started flying backwards, and then Xianxia grabbed Song Jiji by the throat before slamming him against the ground. Bang! The ground cracked apart while Song Jiji's head sunk into the ground. Since Xianxia attacked until the battle ended, less than 3 breaths of time had passed. so many in the surroundings were still stunned. The other members of the Cyclops Mercs had finally recovered from their shock at this moment, and they were about to attack. However, Xianxia suddenly gazed at them and said, "Take another step forward and I'll break his head open." Their expressions changed, and they didn't dare to move another inch forward. Xianxia raised Song Jiji out from the ground and stomped his foot against Song Jiji's dantian. After that, he turned around and gazed at Yi Luyun. Yi Luyun nodded slightly, and then one of the men waved his right hand. A huge basin appeared beside Song Jiji's head. As for its contents, just the smell coming from it made Song Jiji start to vomit. Xianxia nodded slightly and said, "Eat. Eat all of it. I'll pull off your head if you miss a single drop." Song Jiji's expression changed. He hesitated for a moment before he said, "Brother, I, Song Jiji, admit defeat. Please show me some mercy." Meanwhile, Yi Luyun walked over to Xianxia's side and said, "He's called the Cyclops, but we like to call him the ungrateful bastard. Actually, he wasn't the leader of his mercenary group. At that time, it wasn't even called the Cyclops Mercs, it was called the Breeze Mercs instead. He was a brother that the leader of the Breeze Mercs had acknowledged. But in the end, he joined forces with Ma Rong to kill the past leader of the Breeze Mercs. In the end, for the sake of taking full control of the mercenary groups, he and over 100 more took turns with Ma Rong. He is absolutely heartless and without any limits. He can't be allowed to live." Xianxia immediately discarded some thoughts when he heard her, and then he looked down at Song Jiji. "Eat. All 5 kilograms are yours." Song Jiji's face was gloomy. "Brother, must you really go to such extents?" Xianxia shook his head and said, "I like to act according to the person. As for you, I think that I should go to such extents. Because if we didn't possess enough strength, then the outcome that awaited us would definitely be 10 times worse than what you're facing right now. I don't like to torture, but I like to give tooth for tooth. Now begin." As he spoke, Xianxia's foot pressed down slightly, and then it was immediately visible that Song Jiji was in pain. Meanwhile, Song Jiji howled furiously, "Kill him!" Meanwhile, Xianxia suddenly drew his sword and swung it. A ray of sword energy flashed, and then the head of a quasi-emperor who was about to attack had instantly flown into the air while a fountain of blood surged behind it. Xianxia glanced at the other members of the Cyclops Mercs and said, "Stand still. Move and die." Their expressions changed while shock and fear filled their eyes. After all, the strength to kill a quasi-emperor in an instant was too heaven-defying. Xianxia ignored them and looked down at Song Jiji. "Feed him." Yi Luyun waved her right hand upon hearing Xianxia. In an instant, a man walked forward and raised the basin towards Song Jiji's mouth. "Stop!" Song Jiji howled. "Fucking stop! Stop!" No one stopped, of course. They watched as the Cyclops Song Jiji was fed. Around 15 minutes passed before the basin was empty. Burp! Meanwhile, Song Jiji burped, and then some of what he just swallowed instantly came out from his mouth. Song Jiji didn't speak. He just gazed at Xianxia, yet his eyes had no resentment in them. There was only extreme calm in his eyes, and it seemed like he wasn't the one who just consumed 5 kilograms of shit. Xianxia gazed at Song Jiji and chuckled. "Are you thinking about how you'll take revenge on me in the future?" Song Jiji's expression changed in an instant, and then he revealed a pleading gaze as he said, "Big brother, I was wrong. I was ignorant to have offended you, and I've been punished now. So, I hope that Big brother will show mercy. I'm willing to lead my Cyclops Mercs to join you, Big brother, and serve you faithfully. Your acting isn't bad." Xianxia continued, "Unfortunately, that won't work on me." As soon as Xianxia finished speaking, Song Jiji knew that his fate couldn't be changed. So, his expression instantly turned savage as he spoke with resentment. "I. Hiss." He hadn't even been able to speak more than a word before a ray of light flashed by, and then his head left his body. Xianxia put his sword away and turned to look at the other members of the Cyclops Mercs. "Surrender and live, resist and die." Yi Luyun waved her right hand, and the members of the Sword Alliance immediately surrounded the Cyclops Mercs. As expected, all of them surrendered before Yang Yi. Because one of them was unwilling and had chosen to flee, and then he was slaughtered in an instant. None of them wanted to die. Once all of them surrendered, Yang Yi said, "Enter the city." Cloudfall City wasn't very big, and it was only large enough to accommodate a few 100,000. However, it was temporarily sufficient for Yang Ye's group. There was practically no one within the city, and even if they spotted a few figures, those people were cultivator who were about to perish due to a lack of spirit energy. Once they entered the city, everything was carried out in an orderly manner under Yi Liyun's command, and all the required work was divided amongst them. This made them feel even more convinced of Yi Liyun's ability to lead them. Yang Yi was very satisfied as well. In a simple hall, Yang Yi sat on a chair while Yi Liyun stood in front of him. Yi Liyun said, "May I know why you've summoned me here, Sword Master?" Her voice carried a trace of respect. She was a smart person and usually knew how to act and what to do. Yang Yi pointed at the chair in front of him. "Sit." Yi Liyun hesitated for a moment and sat there. Yang Yi gazed at her for a long time and said, "Miss Yi, you're a smart person. To be honest, you're the only person amongst all of them who is capable of making me value you. Now let's have an honest talk." Yi Liyun pondered deeply for a short while before she said, "All right." Yang Yi nodded. "Miss Yi, what plans do you have for the future? I want to know your true thoughts." Yi Liyun remained silent for a short while and said, "I don't have any special plans. I just want to lead my companions before and survive together." Yang Yi stood up and said, "This world is a cage that has imprisoned everyone in here. Even if you attain the Emperor realm, it's impossible to break out of this world. Miss Yi, you should be aware that the spirit energy in this world is actually on the verge of drying up, right? Once that happens, all of us will die without exception. I'm sure you won't refute that, right?" Yi Liyun gazed at Yang Yi and said, "Swordmaster, what are you trying to say?" Yang Yi smiled. "Do you want to leave this world?" She suddenly stood up and gazed at Yang Yi for a long time. "Can I ask you a few questions?" Yang Yi nodded. "Go on." Yi Liyun asked, "Do you have someone's backing?" Yang Yi shook his head. "I'm all alone in this world. I have no backing." She fell silent for a short while before she asked, "Where are you from?" Yang Yi gazed at her for a short while before he replied, "From outside this world." Her pupils constricted, and she gazed at Yang Yi for a very long time before she took a deep breath. "One last question. Did you establish the Sword Alliance because you want to grow into the 6th diamond rank power of this continent?" Yang Yi chuckled. "Would it make a difference even if we become the #1 power in this world? My objective is to lead everyone out of this world. Miss Yi, you should want to see the outside world as well, right?" Yi Liyun clenched her fists. "No one has been able to leave for tens of thousands of years. That's because I hadn't arrived then." Yang Yi looked her in the eyes. "Now, I'm here." A long time passed before Yi Liyun slowly took a knee before him and said, "I, Yi Liyun, swear my allegiance to you." Yang Yi helped her up and said, "My character isn't suitable to manage the Sword Alliance, but you're extremely suitable. Many people in the Sword Alliance are content with how things are now, and I hope that you can change that. Besides that, I hope that everyone will be able to get stronger as soon as possible. Saints and quasi-emperors are too weak. Not only are they unable to survive in this world, it's absolutely impossible for them to survive outside this world." Yang Yi flicked a spatial ring over to her and continued, "I kept 1,000 out of the 5,000 violet crystals I extorted from the Dark Sky Sect, and you can manage the rest." Yi Liyun didn't refuse and took the spatial ring. After all, the city needed violet crystals for many things right now, and 4,000 were actually not really enough. Yang Yi added, "Presently, I need 2 things from you. Firstly, everyone must try their best to get stronger. I'll release the spirit vein in the city later. You can distribute some violet crystals to our members who are about to break through or possess good natural endowment. Let them advance first. As for how to manage all of that, you can do as you see fit. Secondly, help me gather information about something. It's called the Stellar Sword Diagram." "The Stellar Sword Diagram?" Yi Luyun spoke with surprise. Swordmaster? You're looking for the stellar sword diagram? You've heard of it? Yang Yi gazed at her with slight surprise. Yi Luyun nodded. No one on Dark Hell continent hasn't heard of it. Yang Yi was puzzled. Why? She pondered deeply for a moment before she spoke. According to legend, an old man in a Taoist robe intended to destroy this world all those years ago, and the countless experts throughout the continent charged off in succession to stop the old man. But all of them perished. In the end, the past #1 expert of the continent, the sword god Zhen Wuji, rushed back here from outside our region. He activated the stellar sword diagram and drew upon endless energy from the stars to form sword energy. On that day, the sky above and outside Dark Hell continent was covered in sword energy, and that battle shook the world. Yi Luyun shook her head slightly while a trace of dejection could be heard in her voice. In the end, the old man vanished while Zhen Wuji crashed down from the sky. An area of 50,000 kilometers around where he fell is covered in terrifying sword intent, and it's called Godfall. It's the #1 forbidden area of Dark Hell continent as well, because the sword intent on Godfall Mountain is so strong that even emperors are unable to ascend to its peak. Yang Yi frowned slightly because the version Yi Luyun told him wasn't very similar to Lady's version. Of course, he sided with Lady's version. After all, the old man didn't seem like a villainous person at all. If the residents of Dark Hell continent hadn't done something, then the old man would have definitely not done something like that. However, Yang Yi wasn't interested in the past, so he immediately asked, "The stellar sword diagram is at Godfall? It's only likely to be there." She continued, "It's the most likely place because Zhen Wuji fell there all those years ago. Countless experts have headed over there in the last tens of thousands of years with the intention of obtaining the stellar sword diagram. Because once one obtained that divine treasure, one would be able to break through the mysterious force that envelopes Dark Hell continent and leave the continent. However, no one has succeeded throughout the years." Yang Yi nodded slightly. "No matter what, I still have to go there." Yi Luyun hesitated for a moment and asked, "Swordmaster? You came to this world for the stellar sword diagram?" Yang Yi was stunned, and then he shook his head slightly. "I had no choice. I would have had to come here even if the stellar sword diagram wasn't here." She was puzzled. "Why? The Heaven Tao refuses to tolerate my existence." Yang Yi chuckled, and then he spoke seriously. "Miss Yi, my ambition is huge, but it isn't in this world. However, my leadership abilities aren't sufficient, so I need your help. It wouldn't be a problem for you to manage the Sword Alliance with the ability you possess, but it's far from sufficient. The Sword Alliance's current strength is too weak." Yi Luyun spoke solemnly. "I'll do my best." Yang Yi nodded, and then he patted his chest. The small white dragon instantly emerged from there. Yang Yi passed the small white dragon to Yi Luyun and said, "It possesses intelligence of its own, but it once lost its freedom and was restrained for tens of thousands of years. So, don't restrict its freedom, and it's fine so long as it's within the city." As he spoke, Yang Yi walked over to the small white dragon and patted it lightly on the head. "You must stay in the city and can't leave, otherwise you'll be captured. Understand?" The white dragon quickly nodded. Just the fact that its freedom wasn't restricted made it extremely happy. Yi Luyun asked, "Will it try to escape?" The white dragon immediately turned around and glared at Yi Luyun when it heard her, and then it gazed at Yang Yi. It revealed an obedient expression, as if it was saying that it would definitely not flee. Yang Yi chuckled. "I'll let her look for you if you flee. At that time, she'll eat you." The white dragon clearly understood that Yang Yi was speaking about Snowy. So, it immediately revealed a terrified expression and hurriedly shook its head to display that it wouldn't flee. Yang Yi roared with laughter, and then he patted the white dragon on the head. "Miss Yi, you can take it now." Yi Luyun bowed slightly to Yang Yi, and then she left the hall with the small white dragon in her arms. Right after Yi Luyun left, Mu Kanglin, Nan Shuang, and Gulan walked in. Yang Yi gazed at them as Mu Kanglin walked over to him, and then she raised a ring in his direction. Yang Yi glanced at her but didn't take it. Gulan and Nan Shuang's expressions changed when they witnessed this scene, and Nan Shuang hurriedly said, Don't be angry, all right? It was wrong for Big Sister Kanglin to have taken your possessions. Yang Yi chuckled, took the ring, and interrupted Nan Shuang. Am I such a petty person? He glanced at Mu Kanglin and said, Forget what happened in the past. We're on the same side now, so there should be no grudges between us. Mu Kanglin glanced at Yang Yi, nodded lightly, and moved aside. Nan Shuang and Gulan instantly heaved sighs of relief when they witnessed this scene, because they'd thought that Yang Yi would hold a grudge, and they were truly afraid that he would kill her. Yang Yi flicked 100 violet crystals over to each of them. All three of you seem like your cultivations have arrived at a bottleneck, and the only reason you haven't advanced is your lack of violet crystals. He gazed at Mu Kanglin at this point. Your strength isn't bad. Even though you're not at the quasi-emperor realm, you possess the strength of a quasi-emperor. If you can advance into the quasi-emperor realm, then your strength will definitely far surpass ordinary quasi-emperors. It's not easy for Miss Yi to manage the Sword Alliance, so I hope that you'll assist her well. Mu Kanglin glanced at Yang Yi, took the violet crystals, and then bowed slightly. Then I'll be taking them as well. Gulan chuckled. She took the violet crystals, hesitated for a moment, and then said, You won't be angry at me, right? After all, I wanted to kill you in the past, and I frequently badmouthed you to Nan Shuang. Yang Yi smiled. Do you want me to be angry at you? Gulan hurriedly said, I don't. Everyone chuckled when they heard her. It didn't take long for Gulan and Mu Kanglin to leave the hall, and only Yang Yi and Nan Shuang remained. Nan Shuang spoke softly. So you really were so strong. Yang Yi smiled. You even said that I was bragging. Nan Shuang's face turned red, and she spoke softly. It's your fault for being in such a terrible state at that time. Moreover, you frequently acted like you were weak. I wasn't putting on an act. I was really weak at that time. Yang Yi gazed at her while a trace of gentleness could be seen in his eyes. If it wasn't for you, I might have been killed by your big sister Kanglin. If you hadn't given me your violet crystals to repair my body later on, then I would probably still be looking all over the world for violet crystals to restore my body. To be honest, I'm really thankful. Nan Shuang glanced at Yang Yi and said softly, Why have you become so courteous? Even I feel that it's quite weird. Yang Yi chuckled. All right, I won't do that again. If you need help or something else, go look for Miss Yi or come straight to me. Nan Shuang glanced at him and nodded. Nan Shuang left after they chatted for a while, and then Yang Yi turned around and entered into the inner chamber of the hall. He sat cross-legged on the ground, and then he placed 100 violet crystals before him and started to absorb the energy within them like a madman. The violet crystals transformed into spirit energy that entered his body and were completely absorbed by the tiny vortex. After that, threads of violet energy were sent back into Yang Ye's body. Yang Yi didn't use the energy to charge into the mid-rank of the Saint Realm, and he used it to temper his body instead. If he were to try and charge into the mid-rank of the Saint Realm right now, it would actually be very easy for him to succeed. After all, since the Heaven Dao wasn't here to restrict his progress, even charging into the quasi-emperor realm wouldn't be a problem if he had sufficient violet crystals. However, he didn't do that. He hadn't forgotten what Lady had told him. His cultivation had risen too quickly, so there were latent problems within him. While his unexpected advancement into the Saint Realm didn't affect his foundation much, it was still affected a little. So, if he were to charge forward into higher realms of cultivation, then while it would improve his strength, the long-term consequences made his losses outweigh his gains. So, he decided to consolidate his cultivation for now. He decided to charge into the quasi-emperor realm once he'd completely consolidated his foundation. The tiny vortex was revolving slowly within him while primordial violet energy seeped out bit by bit from within it, and then the violet energy flowed throughout his body. Primordial violet energy could be used to repair the body, and it could be used to temper the body as well. However, once his body attained the divine shift realm, its effects had weakened greatly. So, he rarely utilized primordial violet energy to temper his body before this. But while its effects were much weaker, it still was effective. Moreover, primordial violet energy wasn't just capable of tempering his body, it could change his body as well. The main reason his meridians and bones were so strong was because they'd been modified by primordial violet energy. It could be said that his meridians and bones were unlike those possessed by ordinary people. In the end, the instability of his foundation created by the rapid increase in his cultivation was caused by the fact that his meridians and bones couldn't keep up with the advancement of his cultivation. It was like building a house. The foundation of it wasn't even solid, but the lower floor was already being built. It wouldn't make a difference in the beginning, but it would give rise to endless problems as the house was being completed. So he had to strengthen his meridians and bones. Time passed by slowly, and a few days passed in the blink of an eye. Besides consolidating his foundation, Yang Yi had practiced his own sword techniques and utilization of the brink laws during the last few days. Especially the brink laws, because it could be considered as his strongest trump card besides the ultimate version of death by a thought. After all, the ultimate version of death by a thought, his strength at its brink, and his sword intent at its brink could pose a threat to emperors. Especially his sword intent at its brink. He'd never utilized it since he'd comprehended it. Just pure sword intent at the brink was on par with his strength at the brink, so if he merged both his intents and brought them to the brink, then their might would be. Of course, he hadn't tried it yet because bringing two forms of intent to the brink was still quite dangerous for him. But it wasn't that bad because he could bring the danger he faced down to its minimum if he practiced while enveloped by the sword domain. Yang Yi really felt that this specific ability of the sword domain was extremely terrifying. If he had to make a choice between the sword domain and his two intents, he would definitely choose the sword domain. 5 days later, a strand of terrifying pressure appeared in the sky above Cloudfall City. An emperor had arrived. "Those who offend my doomsday city shall die." A voice resounded through the sky above the city. Yang Yi slowly opened his eyes as he sat cross-legged in the inner chamber within the hall, and he said, "You're finally here. Since you've come, then leave your life behind." As soon as he finished speaking, Yang Yi stood up slowly and started walking towards the exit.